Can I ask you what ideas do you have?
I'm
Can I
sorry, what?
ask? Can I ask you what ideas do you have for your new project?
Um, yeah, I have some different ideas. Trying some more electronic influences. Using
Huh?
some more otherworldly sci-fi influences. Some different sounds and field recordings. Taken from nature that I can employ into the music. Not necessarily just fake wind or thunder, but like trying to capture animal
Huh?
sounds or capture the elements of nature in the woods or near a river and incorporate that as a drone or as a back piece that I can use for the remainder of the composition.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about these nature sounds and all of this kind of work, do you what kind of technology or devices do you use? Do you actually record something? For example, in a forest, I live in the mountains. So when I go out late, I'm right in the middle of the forest and I can just hear noises and noises. So you better don't think much because you would just run away from the forest. So do you actually record
Yeah, I
when
use I use a small handheld device. It's a small handheld
really? Yeah.
device that just picks up the noise. It filters out a lot of the compression, so it would sound much better than just using your camera phone or just like a tape recorder. So it's like a digital device that filters out some of the hiss and some of the other unwanted noises. So you'll capture a
Hmm.
much more cleaner sound. And using that in addition to the audio workstations that I use, it allows me to, cut and paste and loop those sounds and place them at different at stages in the recording.
Wow, that's amazing. And do you have any forest or wood or something near that you can go to do it?
Yes, I have
Or do
some
you
different
have,
woods.
yes?
I have some different woods, some like not super high, but there's some like mountainous areas and just like
Mhm.
some lakes and streams, which at certain times of the day are quieter with not a lot of people. So I'm able to capture more elements of that.
When you go out in the woods, you can catch a lot of those because I think that the best sounds are the one that make you. Do you know when you hear a noise and you hold your breath to see if it was you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Any crackle of a branch or
yeah,
any crumble of leaves or any like a rustle of motion could sound like an animal or a person or
exactly.
any bird flying, and it all just can catch you off guard. And those are the elements that I'm going to be incorporating in some different material that I use in future recordings.
Then that's gonna sound amazing because I know the feeling. When I'm in the woods, you hear a noise in the bush, and I just stop and think, Matt, just go on. Nothing happened, because you would just get paranoid with every sound. You think because here we have a lot of wild boars. They are huge. They're very big. You just have to run to climb a tree if you find one because they
Oh
are
yeah.
huge. And when you hear noises, chances are, yes, you have a huge wild boar next to you. So that kind of blood freezing feeling, I guess that's what you're looking for, right?
Yes, dread, like the feeling of dread, the feeling of anxiety, the feeling of apprehension, like what's going to happen next, and occasionally offering elements of surprise. But the dread and the apprehension is what leads up to it. That's what makes it more interesting. The anticipation is sometimes more frightening than the actual event.
Yes, that's when you're alone at home and suddenly you're just afraid because you remember, I don't know, any scene from the war experience, and that's the kind of horror that horror fans are actually looking for. I think that a lot of horror music creators sometimes fall into the metal stereotype. That you only hear music, and that's great, and there's great music out there. But sometimes, what you say, that noise, that branch, that kind of roots noise, right?
Hmm.
That's what mm, makes you makes makes you really afraid,
Absolutely.
really. So that's amazing that you go for it. I think that that's a thing that could go very well with horror games.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay. with the atmosphere of a horror game. So because I love games, I'm like a kid,
Nice.
and yes, and the atmosphere and environment, it's so important, very important. When I was a kid, I played games, not horror games, but that you have to face some kind of monsters, childish monsters, so to speak. And I was really worried. I mean, I was anxious and worried, right? And I think that that's the essence of horror music,
Absolutely.
right? So that's great that you go through that road. Have you always been interested in this kind of horror music?
Yeah, I've been interested in horror for a long time. I've always been, very obsessed with a lot of horror movies with all different
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds. From since when I was like 12 years old, I've just dug into different horror movies from different periods. I started with the 50s period movies, such as the Vincent Price movies, like
Yeah.
House on Haunted Hill is one of my favorite ones. I also liked The Fly, and I was also into House of Wax. The early Frankenstein, Dracula series,
Yeah.
Wolfman, the Mummy series with all of the actors like Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr. Those all of those movies and films like were like the big
Yeah.
ones that influenced me. And then I went on to when I got older into Friday the 13th, Chucky, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street,
Mm-hmm.
um, like other 80s movies like Warlock, Pumpkinhead, Fright Night, Lost Boys, Near Dark, just all of those like well-known films that weren't super famous, but did very well at the time. And in the 90s, for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a lot of like super well-known horror movies that were in the forefront that grabbed my attention. But I got back into horror a lot in the 2000s when the Saw series emerged and when Hostel came around and a lot of the movies started getting more paranormal, such as like Paranormal Activity and then
Yeah.
Insidious and Sinister. Throughout the 2010s, I started to really grab onto that as well and carry further into it. And now I've noticed
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot of horror nowadays is very much about like real life situations. A lot of social
Mm-hmm.
commentary involved and a lot of situations involving things where with real people dealing with real issues, and it makes you think that there's really scary situations that can happen every day that are implemented very well into movies now too.
Yes, I think that that makes us a bit um, like we have an anesthesia for horror because the world has so horrific things happening that sometimes it's so difficult to scare the audience,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's why you have to go for, like you say, for more realistic things. I think what you say, I find it interesting that you said in the 90s that you weren't so interested in horror movies. I think because I was having conversation a little ago about this, that there has been a little period where the horror villains, to say somehow, like Freddy and Michael and Jason, the classics, they are suddenly superheroes.
Yes, yes, you hit it.
So
You were correct.
yes, a horror, the horror icons, uh, people are on their side. I mean, they have it's a scary. It's even a scary, right? Because I think it goes together with that. It's very difficult to scare people. I think it has a connection, and it makes that the real horror fans lose their, I don't know, their joy for horror. No, because there are people like in Twitter, girls saying there are Jason's girlfriends and things like that, and say, I mean, that was not the point. Horror is meant to scare you, not
Oh, of
to
course.
make right. So I think there's a, I don't know, a period of time that horror has lost its meaning.
You're right. It hasn't, there's a period of time where it got stagnant and it hasn't really evolved. I mean, you would see some generic vampire movies emerge in the
Exactly.
90s. Like
Mm,
you would see Interview with the Vampire or Bram Stoker's Dracula, but a more romanticized version of Dracula that's more of a
mm.
sexual icon or someone who,
Yeah,
gives more empathy. But I prefer, Bela Lugosi's portrayal of Dracula. He was ferocious, hideous, and scary, and yet charming at the same time, but he still terrified you when you looked into his
yeah,
eyes. Like that's the
exactly.
vampire figure that I really admire.
Yes, exactly. And I think that I don't know if maybe it can coincide with that period that you say you lost interest for a bit, but I think that it has happened a lot of people because to a lot of people because it's happened to me. I try to watch as many horror movies as I can to be on date, to review them, to whatever. And there's a lot of them that I say, where is the horror? No, it's a pretty movie. I don't understand what is the horror. No, and I prefer Freddy or even the Evil Dead. I just
Right, there you go.
want, yeah, I want some horror, please, even if it's cheesy. But
Of
it's
course.
we have lost, and I think that with music, maybe it's happened a bit that that the evolution of horror music has has evolved, sorry, with this kind of change in the horror industry.
Of course.
So it's
Absolutely.
refreshing. It's right. So it's refreshing to find music that it's really meant to scare you,
Oh yeah.
right?
Or
And
at the
have
very least make you think and like, not even necessarily terrify you, but make you like wonder. The element of wonder I think is super important.
yeah, watch over your shoulder, right? I think it's
Yes.
the good horror movie is the one that when you get out of the movies or your home or whatever, you watch over your shoulder. That's the good horror movie. So in the music industry, mm, do you see the same pattern?
It's interesting. The music industry itself has changed so much in the last 30
Mm,
years because it's an industry now where, it's not based on physical record sales, it's based on digital streams and
yeah,
YouTube performances. You know, Traditional bands have a much more difficult time of, becoming superstars, especially since music styles have changed so much since the 1990s. I mean,
mm,
nowadays there's different ways of becoming well known and
yeah,
in employing your music into different avenues. I think a lot of people were stuck into the mindset that rock music was going to be the music that's going to last forever, but we're seeing
yeah,
nowadays that rock music is not anywhere near as relevant or as prominent as it was in the 80s or 70s or
mm,
beyond. Nowadays a lot of music is electronic based, but you have to embrace change and adapt to the times and realize that to attract new fans or new
yeah,
potential listeners, it's good to think out of the box and don't try to do the old-fashioned way of trying to just get a band together and do music that's going to be a fad that only lasts maybe 3 years before people forget about it.
yeah. I think of course music has evolved with technology, social media, as you say, everything is different. I think, in my opinion, no one is gonna be a superstar anymore. Just one
No,
superstar in the world. That doesn't exist because there's so many talented people that now has the tools to get to the world.
of
I think
course.
a few years ago, you couldn't record on YouTube or you couldn't have social media. So you couldn't make people know you this easy. But now they
Absolutely.
can. So the superstars, I think they have an expiration date,
Oh, of course. You're absolutely right.
right? But I think that's amazing because that allows you to really choose what you like. Because there's a lot of people making not only music, art, movies, games. I think that we have a lot more to choose amongst, and
Yes.
we're a lot of people in the world. There's
Mhm.
audience for everyone.
Of
So I
course.
yeah, so I think all these platforms and maybe it's there's two sides of this, right? Because on one side, it's difficult to get to everyone because there's many more people doing something similar to what you do.
Hmm.
But on the other side, you can just get to the world, and if you market yourself properly and you do a
Of
good
course.
job, people
Of
can
course.
really know you.
Yeah, that's the
So,
thing. That's the thing. It's not a race. You shouldn't be about, trying to be better than the next person. I mean, just be your best self that you can be and do your best
exactly.
with your doing, but don't try to, put down anybody else for doing something similar because they could be doing something different than you do. And I think everybody should have something different to offer to the table.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's something that I see a lot in the horror community. At least for my experience and all the people I have worked with all these years, the horror community in general, it's very embracing. It's
Mhm.
not that competitive. You can, at least I have a very good relation with lots of websites, and there's not a lot of competition in horror. But I don't know if you feel the same in the horror world, because I'm not in the music world.
Yeah, it could be different. I know the music business is very competitive and cutthroat, and I know the music business is all about seeing who can get ahead further in a lot of
Yeah.
different ways. That attitude has changed with a lot of younger people, which I really appreciate. People who
Mm-hmm.
are more appreciative of the art and are willing to work together. On Twitter, I've noticed I have a lot of people who are into the ambient atmospheric music genre that
Yeah.
we've gotten a Twitter
Mm-hmm.
thread where we sometimes trade Bandcamp albums, or we just trade different songs between each other, or even collaborate on different things. And
Yeah.
it makes it more rewarding in that sense because in the rock music world, it seems more like, you always have different bands and different people who are always trying to outshine or outdo the other for some different reason. And
Mm.
it gets stale after a while and it gets boring.
Yeah, I've seen that sometimes when you hear a podcast, or I don't know, just the media, the things you see scrolling down with it. In other genres, there's always people, I don't know, fighting against each other, and it's something I haven't seen in the horror world, at least with the people I have.
Yeah.
The right, the
Well,
websites,
yes.
and
Sometimes, on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook, sometimes you'll get petty people, but like that'll do other
yeah.
things that are pretty stupid. But I think they're going to happen everywhere, and you're always going to get that. Everybody's going to have, people
Mm,
that just like to start trouble, but
yeah.
troublemakers exist in every walk of life, so that's just unavoidable.
Yes, exactly. They're everywhere. I have, I don't know. I think, for example, when someone comes to me, and I think another horror website can give them a better service because I do more work of like a personal agent kind of thing, and they have more, I don't know, more traffic on Twitter or something. I just forward them to them. Like, these people are gonna make a better work for you. I mean, there's no, and I think that's a beautiful thing in the horror industry. Maybe if we went up to another spheres, it will be different, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe it's because we're underground. Maybe,
perhaps.
perhaps,
No.
because we're all here down, But I don't know. I think it's a beautiful world, and I think you're doing an amazing work because your music is really different. When someone sends me music to check out or to promote or whatever, normally it's very similar.
Well,
The
that's
horror
good though.
music, yes, because heavy metal and horror are together. So,
Mhm.
but your music, it sounds like carefully made for horror.
Oh yes, a lot of it is done, within that same trappings to, attract people who love Halloween, who love horror films, who like
Mm,
to read horror fiction, or, for those who are into the dark arts or into the occult, and I think it attracts different people from various avenues who can appreciate the music in however they interpret or perceive it.
I'm sure. I'm sure they do because it's different. It's really different. and I always encourage everyone to check it out.
Well,
And
thank you.
even, yes, it's true. And any filmmaker or horror creator, I always, because if you want to hear something different but really essential horror, check him out because he does an amazing work. And I really think you're gonna get, how you say it in English, that you're gonna get far. You're gonna have a good career ahead of you
Well,
with the
thank
kind of
you.
music that you do. Yes, because it's not easy to find. It's yeah. It's my personal opinion, but
Well, no,
I
I
really
really appreciate
think
that.
I would, and I would, but I do recommend it to everyone I can
Well, I appreciate
because
that.
it's even a good music to have like an ambient music. You
Hmm.
it's like that music that you have in your house, around
Yeah.
your house, like environmental music. That's an amazing music for that too.
Well,
So I always think the other day that I was listening to your music, I thought that would be a cool music to have like in a horror convention, for example,
perhaps, yes,
right?
absolutely.
Like a background music in a horror convention. That would be amazing.
Well, great.
So yeah, so I think you're gonna do great. It's difficult because I know there's a lot of people doing, but people who do so original things like you will pop up amongst the rest. I'm pretty sure.
No, no, I really appreciate that, and I'm honored. I'm honored to be on a part of this on this video recording, and I think it's you know wonderful that that you've done an amazing job promoting my work and reaching me out to new potential fans and listeners, and it's definitely helped me in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. So
Fantastic.
I'm so happy to talk to you. I was looking forward to this. I was already excited to talk to you.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. I think it's great. Like even like after a couple of years of like doing work and getting helping you advertise and getting my stuff out there, this is just super cool to actually like get the full interview face to face and get to know like how well you work this together and yeah, it's great.
And I think, yeah, I was thinking someday I was thinking that there's a lot of websites and all of that and interviews that they are written, but in this social media mm, explosion society, let's do something a bit more real,
Absolutely. I mean, that makes it work
right?
better. And, it promotes authentic interaction and it promotes,
Mm,
a greater sense of community with, people who like the same thing. And it doesn't make people feel as detached or, like a robot where it's just like you see a fake figure. Now you
yeah,
get to see some real folks talking and having conversation. It's awesome.
exactly, exactly. So it's been a time from here that I encourage even my clients and everyone I work with, just call me because nowadays via Zoom or via Facebook or whatever, can call me to my phone. So there are a lot of clients that just call me, hey, this cover, we have to put it together for tomorrow or whatever. So instead of an email, they call me, which I find amazing because you don't feel like a computer all the time.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like sometimes, you might have a job that's like sporadic, or you might have a career that, isn't like a traditional like 9 to 5 job where I know in America, everything is so like, most people have 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 jobs, but I work weird hours. I work like night hours, like from like 3 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
some nights. And sometimes I do like days during the day because I teach music lessons and
Huh?
sometimes I teach sporadically. Like I'll have like a Saturday where I'll work for 4 hours and a Sunday where I work for 2 hours. And Monday through Thursday, I'll work in different clusters for like 5 hours. And it all adds up
Yeah.
to a full work week, but like it's not like a traditional thing where it's like get up, go,
Yeah.
come back, so it gives me time to, create and record and do other things when nobody's home during the day. But
Mm-hmm.
the downside of that is, if people are doing work or if there's construction down the road or if something's going on, that could be a distraction.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
if you're just hearing drills or hammers, boom, boom, and you're just
Yeah.
like I can't get that on the microphone.
Yeah. That's true. I live very near National Road, and sometimes I'm talking to someone and there's a truck with a horn or something. It's like, no, not now. you know. So it's you can just control it. But I'm so happy to talk to you.